Hello, and welcome back to another episode of It Had to Happen, the People's Podcast. I'm your host, Crystal Carter, and today we're going to talk about something that is a little bit uncomfortable, but definitely necessary to voice over. I recently got a video in my IG inbox from a friend, and they wanted my take on what was being said. I'm going to try to share it here, and we'll see if it actually works. Let's see. What was this? I can't pull it up. Did set up permissions in time. Okay, but what the video was basically explaining was the guy says, like, how do we raise kids? And the other gentleman replied and said, we don't. We let them raise us. And I felt so relieved because that has been my parenting strategy. Without knowing this man before yesterday, without, being privy to his strategy and prophecy or whatever he got going on, that has always been my strategy as a parent. Is that not necessarily I guess I didn't voice over that she was raising me, but that we were definitely being raised together through this process of parenting. My daughter is 4, and one of the things that I did before I became a parent was I decided to go to therapy for the first time. Well, actually, this I attempted therapy before. It did not work. I remember going to this one man office. As soon as I sat down, he started the timer. He sat there. He was Asian. I was black. I'm talking about things. He's like, so tell me about your childhood. I was just like, you want to know my name first? Like, you could tell he was in a habitual state, or he just didn't GAF. But whatever it was, he clearly wasn't the right fit. And I never went back. But then fast forward, I was 7 months pregnant. I was like, yo, I got some stuff that I need to heal, because I realized that while Marley looked like her daddy and she be acting like her mama sometimes, looks are not the only thing that we pass on to our kids. We pass on our insecurities. We pass on what I'm reading through this book, How to Do the Work by Dr. Nicole LaPera, is we pass along our traumas, whether consciously or unconsciously. And I didn't want that. I didn't want her to start at a deficit, if I'm being honest. Emotionally, spiritually, I didn't want her to start at a deficit. I wanted her to be able um, to experience a normal childhood, whatever that looks like. But I did know that I didn't want to deliberately hand off anything that I could offset before she got here. For example, um, like just self love. Like I always love myself, because why wouldn't I? But at the same time, I have had moments. I've been in relationships that have caused me to have moments where I didn't appreciate myself, because I figured something was wrong with me, and if I was having these negative experiences. So I wanted to be able to maintain a level of self love regardless of external circumstances, and check, I got that. I wanted to be able to call a thing when it came to my childhood trauma. Like, what? Let's give it a name. Like, I know it existed. I know I have some. I don't know what it is, but I know I have some childhood trauma. Turns out it was abandonment, something that I pray that she never has to experience. And actually, she may be experiencing it now, unintentionally, because we live in Fort Worth, Texas. Her dad lives in Los Angeles, and like I've noticed how she looks at other kids when they're with their dad, and that longing that she has in her eyes. And she's, I've been teaching her boundaries early on, which is, and she'll voice over how she feels. I miss my dad a lot. I want to live closer to him. She'll say these things as a 4-year-old. Imagine that. So I'm just like, ooh, child. Um, so yeah, speaking of boundaries, boundaries were something that I was not able to establish as a child, not because my parents were horrible people, but because they were doing the exact same thing that they were taught, that their parents were taught, that their parents were taught, that their slave owners taught them, which is, you don't get a choice. This is what you get. Like, you get what's in front of you. This is what my daughter says. You get what you get, and you don't throw a fit. That's how we lived our lives, but that's not how I wanted my child to live her life, especially as it relates to establishing boundaries with adults. Um, if Marley don't want to say hey to you, or she don't want to hug you, I am so sorry. I'll apologize for her, but I will not allow her to apologize, and I do not make her do things. You don't have to hug your auntie if you don't want to. You don't have to say hi to a stranger that I'm speaking to if you don't want to. You don't have to eat if you don't want to. Now, here's the thing. Along with that, I'm teaching her consequences, because the consequence of not eating your food is you going to bed hungry. Whatever you can reach, you can have. But once I'm in the bed, sis, let me lay. So just thinking about that from my parenting strategy, and when that guy said, we don't raise them, they raise us, I felt that in my bones. And I'm reading this book, and I have it on audiobook, Audible, because I kind of want to get through it. I've had this from the Forward Library for a month and a half, and I got nowhere, because the way I read is I'll find something interesting, and then I want to meditate on it for a few days. Then I want to go back to it and read it again, then read something else, and then it keeps going. It's called reading and comprehension, but it also takes a very long time to get through. But one thing this book talks about is that basically we all have some trauma, and it sounds horrible, but actually a little bit comforting, right? It talks about how your parents' trauma is a result of how they treated you. And one thing that I understood even as a kid was that parents are people too. Any childhood trauma caused by a parent is likely a result of trauma they experience themselves, and they have that unchecked trauma, those unchecked emotions. And then what happens is it shows up in how they parent. Think about your childhood. Matter of fact, let me tell on myself. Thinking about my childhood trauma, right, of abandonment, that showed up in every relationship I had. It showed up me overcompensating to be enough so that people would stick around, or accepting bad behaviors so that people wouldn't leave. You see what I'm saying? Like, the trauma shows up whether we want it to or not. And as a parent, especially if you have a kid where there's still hope, and I say there's still hope because while teenagers can be healed through therapy and conversations, it's a lot easier to do it with the 2, 3, 4 year old to flip the script and become a different type of parent than it is when your child's 26. Like 26, they're probably not listening to you. They're probably already traumatized, and it shows up the fact that they don't come to Thanksgiving. Speaking of, Oprah recently, well, I was listening to CBS, not CNN, CBS Mornings with her homegirl, Gayle King, and they were talking about how she says it's like she has a podcast, or either she mentioned that it's okay to not go home for the holidays, to create boundaries around yourself and not go home for the holidays. And I totally agree. Like, if going home re-traumatizes you, don't do that. But if going home re-traumatizes you and you want to either reconcile a relationship or empower your inner child, go home. You're an adult now. Say what needs to be said and get the hell out of there. Like, it's not, I think, by telling people to just avoid family members because of un, unpleasant feelings is a cop out. And there's no way we heal that way. Um, so, yeah. So I'm reading this book, and it was something else that I wanted to call out really quickly. Just trauma, a misunderstood concept, the definitions of trauma, childhood conditioning. Not that one. Having a parent who does not see or hear you. Okay, let's talk about that. That's one to me that stings a little bit, for personal reasons. If you are not familiar, I advise you to go to Amazon.com, type in my name, Crystal with a K, Carter with a K, and get my book, It Had to Happen. And you'll understand why it stings a little bit. But not being seen and heard is like really, really a big deal, especially for kids, because it helps to establish what I'm reading in this book and what I've seen from my own child. It helps to establish their level of confidence. Sometimes, and here's the thing, we cannot see and hear them unintentionally, right? I'm in my phone or I'm working and she wants to play and she has something to say that's important. And I'm kind of like brushing off, like, yeah, give me 1 minute. Or, what? That's crazy. But not even understanding what she said with a totally inappropriate response. Um, it establishes what level of confidence they have, and if they feel like they have a voice. And I think a lot of, especially girls, women, little girls who will eventually grow up to be young women, need to be heard and seen, so that when they get out in corporate America, they demand that same level of hear me, see me, I'm a person, I'm important. um and I know for a fact that if you do not demand to be seen and heard in certain rooms, your ass won't be heard and seen. So yeah. It was something else I really wanted to point out. I can't find it. See, this is the problem with having audiobooks. Because on the audiobook, I clipped it and I saved it, but I'm using my phone right now, so I can't access it. And I have the physical copy, and it doesn't tell me whatever. Anyway, let me see. Trauma body. Oh, this is one. Oh my gosh, page 67. Trauma body. Let's talk about it. So I'm listening to this audiobook. I'm in the gym at the time, and it's talking about something that I believe a lot of people are experiencing, but don't know they're experiencing because they don't have the knowledge or don't know what to call it. Trauma body is when your trauma shows up in your physical being, meaning it shows up as disease, it shows up as aches and pains, it shows up as stress, which turns into cortisol, which gives you a fupa. Like, I was blown away by the idea of trauma body because it explains so many. Okay, thumbs up. I'm doing a great job. Trauma body explains so many illnesses, and it's funny because the author mentions, BIPOC people and how we're more susceptible to getting certain type of diseases because we live in an automatic trauma state, so it shows up in our body. So that is the hypertension, that is, the heart diseases, that is the cancers, because the trauma induces stress, which morphs into something that we shouldn't have to deal with in the first damn place. um so I just thought that was crazy how, and I know people who have chronic aches that they can't explain where they came from, but because I know these people deeply well, they're they have unchecked trauma too. And that unchecked trauma may, I'm not a doctor, so I don't know, but I'm just guessing based on what I've been reading, that unchecked trauma may be morphing into trauma body, which is wild. Do I have a boogie? No. Okay. This angle got look like I got a boogie in my nose. Sorry. Um, but I thought that was wild as a theory that trauma body. Yeah. Whew. Just think about your grandmother. I think about my grandmom. She had some unchecked trauma for sure. Even from one of the stories she told me, it was a traumatic story. It didn't involve anyone physically or doing anything to her, but the emotional trauma that it caused. I can imagine how that morphed into the the trauma body that she was experiencing, which is when she was a little girl, her dad was a white man who had married a black woman in the 40s. So, it was hella unacceptable. But he went to his dad, who was a slave owning white man, um, uh, fairly wealthy. And he asked his dad, he's like, "Hey, dad, um, let me get $100. I needed to, take care of my family for $100 back then, probably a couple months, right? Take care of my family, work is tough, whatever the case is." And the dad looks at him with his kids in the car and he says, "I'll give you the $100 if you let them kids get out there and pick some cotton for me." And my grandmother, she remembered that. Like, this was probably months before she had went to be with the Lord, and she told me that story, and she's like, I wouldn't, no matter what my dad said, I wasn't getting out there and picking no cotton. But that was the last time my dad saw his dad, and we saw that man who was our grandfather. Talk about traumatic. I don't know how many, I grew up in Mississippi, so people were still slaves at the time this happened, believe it or not. However, for that to be his response, imagine the trauma that came along with that, you know? So I think, and then the cancers, plural, that invaded her body, the, hypertension that invaded her body, the all the things that invaded her body. I'm not saying this man caused my grandmother, you know, cancer, because if he did, I'd be looking for his, never mind. Anyway, just it's just an interesting concept. As I continue to read this book, I do want to share some things with you. I mentioned it in, I want to say the first episode I uploaded to YouTube. Um, but I never kind of circled back. Oh, there's one more concept. I turned the page and I found it. Emotional addiction. Okay, so we know what addiction is, right? That's never too much, never too much. It's too much. Too much. Okay, so we know what addiction is. Emotional addiction says you want to let me find it. I don't want to misquote it. I actually want to read it directly from the book. Give me 1 second, guys. Okay, almost there. Here we go. That's the wrong one. That's true too. I was reading it to my family about how we pass along more than we think we do. Um, Come on, buddy. Where is it? Oh, I'm gonna find it. Don't give up on me. Okay, I found it. Okay, so it says she's talking about how she went to work at recovery homes and she was dealing with substance abuse patients. And she says, this helped me to gain perspective into the actual lived experience of those who struggle to control their substance use. Eventually, these experiences led me to the conclusion that addiction isn't limited to specific substances and experiences such as alcohol, drugs, gambling, sex. Cycles of human emotions can be addicting too. I'm going to keep going. One more. Emotional addiction is particularly powerful when we habitually seek or avoid certain emotional states as a way to cope with trauma. One more time. Emotional addiction is particularly powerful when we habitually seek or avoid emotional states as a way to cope with trauma. Girl, the fact that you talking about you don't want a man, you don't want to be loved, emotional trauma. You are avoiding because of emotional trauma. The fact that you always getting angry, everything makes you angry, emotional trauma. Habitually seek or avoid. Oh, I felt this in my spirit because I was like, yo, I can recall a time and place in the world where I had emotional trauma. I just wanted people to I just wanted to be loved. And I was seeking this love from the strangers of places, regardless. And even if it was unhealthy the way I received it, even if I got a little hit, give me a little hit of love, I'll be okay. Emotional trauma. I'm done. Like this book is so good. I do encourage you, if you have a moment, if you have time, if you can go to your local library, request it. It ain't at the Fort Worth library, it's at my house. Give it a month. I promise I'll get it back to you. Um, but it's so good. And it's like things that there's so much knowledge out there. We should all be always get we should always be getting smarter. But when I tell you um, some of the things I've learned to hear about how to be a parent, how to show up for my kid, um, how to not deliberately traumatize her. Um, I just want to be a better mom um, than I had growing up. Have a phenomenal mother now. Love my mama to death. Um, but the years that shaped me, um, I wish she showed up differently for me. She had her own trauma. And that's where kind of full circle close this conversation. When I started saying parents are people too, she had her own trauma. The way my dad showed up, he had his own trauma. And it's interesting. And when you, as you get older, you start to ask questions. One thing about me and my family, I'm gonna ask you a million questions. We gonna like we're sitting in a room, ain't got nothing to do. I'm a dig deep on something. And what I found is the more I ask my parents about their childhood, their parents, their grandparents, their sibling relationships, their romantic relationships, the more I learned that they have unchecked trauma. And I absolutely understand why they were the way they were when they were raising me, because they were young, 19, 21. They were kids. But not that doesn't excuse, and it doesn't unhurt me, if that makes sense. But it does give my empathetic self room to be okay with, what happened. And then I gotta take it to the Bible before we go. Okay. All things work together for the good of those who love the Lord. True or false? Now, I've been in love with God since I was a kid, since I realized God was available and acceptable. Um, available and accepting of who I am, regardless. You know, um, yeah, I've been in love with God the entire time, so I can check that box, and I realize that my life, as it is now, is a reflection of those unpleasant moments. Was that Romans 8:28? We know that all things work together for the good of those who love the Lord, who have been called according to his purpose. And if you truly believe that the most dreadful thing that you've experienced, no matter what it is, you have to believe that it can, and it will work together for your good. And the good may not be your good as much as it may be someone else's good. It may look like you having a podcast and having this conversation about your traumas in a public forum in a way that makes you a little uncomfortable, but it feels necessary. You feel me? So I'm gonna leave it. I'm gonna let that go. I ain't gonna get too deep in my Bible today. Just Romans 8:28. Just remember that as you're evaluating yourself after this call, after this conversation, you're evaluating yourself and you're like, do I have trauma? Am I showing up as a traumatic parent? Am I creating trauma within my child? Like whatever it is, it can work together. God can use the Bible. It's full of endless stories of God using situations that are very uncomfortable, like, I don't know, crucifixion, to do some good in the world. So take that and let them use you. All right. I love you guys. Thank you for today's episode. This was kind of a little all over the place, but I got through what needed to get got through. I got through what needed to. I said what I said. Jesus, you're judging now. I love you guys. Talk to you later. Bye.